the sheriff declared. "Pick any woman in this town, Cowboy." "I choose the Obese one," he replied. The sun hung low over Dustspire, a small town on the edge of the arid expanse. The sky was a strange mix of orange and purple, streaked with the faint trails of passing starships. Dustspire was the kind of place where stories grew bigger than reality, and rumors traveled faster than hover wagons on the cracked roads. The wooden buildings were old, but bright neon signs flickered with names like the Rusted Blaster, Galactic Saloon, and Benny's Star Supplies. Jace Calloway rode in slowly, dust kicking up behind his long boots. He was known as Six-Shot Jace, though no one had seen him fire a gun in years. Instead, his skill was in reading people, knowing towns, and making the impossible happen with a clever plan or a smooth word. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, a brown leather coat that had seen better days, and a small satchel that jiggled with tools and gadgets he liked to carry. The town seemed quiet at first, but Jace could feel the watchful eyes of the townsfolk. Dustspire had a reputation for being unpredictable, and every stranger got more attention than they wanted. Children peeked from behind crates, shopkeepers wiped counters nervously, and an old mechanic whistled as he worked on a hovering wagon wheel. Jace dismounted near the center of town, his boots crunching against the sand and metal scraps littering the street. He looked around, taking in the faded posters, the neon flickers, and the odd mix of futuristic tech in the old Western-style town. It was the perfect kind of place for a bounty hunter, or anyone looking for trouble, adventure, or opportunity. He didn't have long to wonder. From the doorway of the sheriff's office came a booming voice. "All right, people of Dustspire, gather round." The voice belonged to Sheriff Bramble, a tall man with a gray mustache that stuck out like satellite dishes and a hat so large it almost touched his shoulders. He had a warm but commanding presence, and though his voice was loud, it carried a playful tone. Jay stepped closer, curious. Other townsfolk were already forming a loose circle around the sheriff, muttering and pointing at him. "Today," the sheriff continued, "any cowboy can pick a partner for a mission I've got waiting. Choose wisely, because this ain't just a walk in the desert. You might find riches, excitement, or a little trouble along the way." A few cowboys and travelers shifted nervously. Some whispered to each other. It was clear the sheriff did this often, but it was unusual for someone to make the choice so public. Jace squinted through the crowd, his eyes landing on a woman near the edge of the square. She was bending over a workbench, fixing a small mechanical contraption that whirred and buzzed. She was larger than most of the townsfolk, with round cheeks flushed from the sun and a broad, genuine smile. Her hands moved quickly and confidently, adjusting gears and wires as sparks popped harmlessly around her. The sheriff noticed Jace staring. He raised a bushy eyebrow and called out, "Well, cowboy, who will it be?" Jace straightened his back, adjusted his hat, and pointed without hesitation. "I choose the obese one," he said simply. The crowd froze. Whispers rippled through the square like wind over sand. Some gasped, some laughed quietly, and a few shook their heads in disbelief. The woman, Mara Biggs, looked up from her workbench and blinked, her wide eyes filled with surprise. The sheriff roared with laughter. "Well, I'll be. Bold choice, Jace Calloway. Mara, you're up. Looks like adventure found you today." Mara's cheeks turned a rosy pink. She stood slowly, brushing grease from her hands. Adventure, huh? I suppose I can give it a try," she said, her voice strong and confident, though her smile betrayed a flicker of nervousness. Jace gave her a small nod. "Don't worry, we'll keep things interesting." As the crowd dispersed, some shaking their heads and muttering about Jace's odd choice, the two of them made their way to the outskirts of town. Mara carried her tool bag, filled with odd gadgets and mechanical devices of her own invention. Jace adjusted the straps on his satchel, feeling the thrill of an unknown mission settling over him like a warm breeze. "First time working together?" Mara asked, her tone curious. "First time for anything like this," Jace admitted. "But I've got a feeling we'll do just fine." The desert stretched endlessly ahead. Dustspire's buildings were small dots behind them, and the sky above shimmered with distant starships and wandering comets. It was quiet, peaceful, but Jace knew the quiet always came before the unusual. "So," Mara said, opening her tool bag, "what's the mission exactly?" Jace pulled out a small data chip from his satchel. "The sheriff says there's an anomaly out near the Crater Plains. Some sort of energy reading that doesn't make sense. Could be a lost probe, a rogue AI, or just something the universe decided to play with. Either way, we need to check it out." Mara tilted her head. "Sounds like my kind of problem. I've got just the gadgets for that." She pulled out a compact device that unfolded into a hovering scanner. Lights blinked and tiny gears whirred as it hummed to life. This should help us map the energy field and detect anything unusual. Jace whistled softly. Impressive. Let's hope it's as smart in the field as it looks. The two of them began walking, the sand crunching under their boots. The sun sank lower, casting long shadows that danced over the desert rocks. Despite the calm, Jace kept his eyes sharp, scanning for anything that might hint at trouble or adventure. Mara's scanner floated beside them, pinging lightly as it traced invisible waves in the air. Along the way, they passed a few scattered travelers. One small hover wagon nearly tipped over as a young boy laughed and tried to race it across the dunes. Jace smiled faintly. Even in strange places, life had a way of reminding you it wasn't always serious. Hours passed. The desert turned a deep violet as the first stars appeared. They reached the edge of the crater plains, where jagged rocks jutted from the ground and strange metallic shards sparkled faintly in the fading light. Mara set down her tools and began scanning the area. Jace crouched beside her, examining the shards. Looks old, he said, but not like anything I've seen before. Mara's scanner beeped sharply, spinning to life. There's something here, she said. Something moving, but it's not alive, not exactly. Maybe a robot? Or a probe? Jace grinned. Then it looks like our first mystery. Let's find out what we're dealing with. As they moved closer, the metal shards began to shimmer and shift. Light danced across their surfaces in strange, almost playful patterns. Mara leaned closer, her hands flying over her scanner's controls. Suddenly, a small figure zipped out from behind a rock, a hovering drone no larger than a cat. It blinked with blue lights, spinning in the air like it was trying to decide whether they were friends or foes. Jace stepped back slightly, hand on his satchel. Well, that's unusual. Mara laughed. Not at all. This is exactly what I wanted. She adjusted a dial on her scanner, and the drone tilted in the air, circling them with curiosity. For the first time that day, Jace felt a thrill he hadn't felt in years. Adventure wasn't just coming, it was already here. And it was a little strange, a little tricky, and completely unpredictable. As the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of violet and gold, Jace and Mara prepared to follow the drone deeper into the crater plains. Whatever this anomaly was, it was just the beginning. And Dustspire, the dusty little town with a flair for the dramatic, had no idea the excitement that had just rolled in on horseback. The night air of the crater plains was cool, carrying the faint hum of distant energy waves. Stars sparkled above like scattered diamonds, and the crescent of Dustspire's moon hung low, giving the desert a soft silver glow. Jace Calloway and Mara Biggs stood at the edge of the jagged rocks, watching the small, hovering drone spin and blink as it moved ahead of them. It's cute, Jace said, half amused, half cautious. He studied the drone carefully, but it doesn't look like it wants to be followed. It might be tricky. Mara laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Cute? I've seen bigger problems in my workbench. This little guy is nothing. Let's see what it's up to. She adjusted her scanner, and the drone responded immediately, spinning faster and making a series of soft whirring noises. Seems like it wants us to follow, Mara said. Or maybe it's just curious. Or maybe it's leading us into trouble, Jace replied. He shrugged, his usual grin appearing. Either way, it's too late to turn back. They began moving across the crater plains. The ground beneath them was rough, a mix of sand and jagged metal shards from old machinery or alien remnants long forgotten. The drone hovered a few feet above the surface, dipping and rising almost as if it were skipping stones in the air. You ever wonder why the sheriff picked today for a choose-your-partner mission? Mara asked, as she kept the scanner active. Seems like he knew something was happening out here. Jace said with a small laugh, he loves making stories. I wouldn't be surprised if he just wanted to see me pick someone unexpected. Mara smiled. Well, congratulations. You picked me. And now we're in the middle of whatever this is. As they followed the drone, the ground began to change. Small ridges of sand twisted into spiral patterns, glittering under the moonlight as though tiny fragments of crystal had mixed with the dirt. Mara bent down to examine one of the spirals, touching it lightly. Interesting, she murmured. It's not natural, some kind of residue. Could be energy-based, maybe left by the drone. Jace crouched beside her. Looks like we're getting close to something important. Keep your scanner ready. The drone suddenly zipped forward, leading them to a narrow canyon with tall, angular rocks that formed an almost perfect corridor. The hum of energy was louder here, and the temperature seemed to rise slightly. Mara adjusted a dial on her scanner, and the machine blinked a soft green light. "This is different," she said. "The energy signature is stronger. Whatever this drone is connected to, it's here." Jace stepped carefully, scanning the rocks for movement. "Stay alert." "Something tells me we're not just chasing a lost drone," Mara grinned. "Then let's make it interesting." They moved deeper into the canyon. The walls reflected soft blue glows from the drone, making shadows dance in strange patterns. Every few steps, Mara paused to scan the surroundings, adjusting her tools to track the drone's energy signals. Jace, meanwhile, kept his hand near his satchel, ready to use any gadget or device if necessary. After several minutes, the canyon opened into a small clearing. The drone hovered above a large, metallic object half buried in the sand. It looked like a strange capsule, covered in symbols neither of them recognized. Soft lights pulsed across its surface in rhythm with the drone's signals. "Looks like a delivery pod of some kind," Mara said, excitement in her voice. "But why is it here? And why is it awake?" The drone zipped closer to the pod, spinning rapidly. Then it hovered in front of Jace and Mara, almost as if it wanted them to touch the pod. "Okay," Jace said, stepping forward slowly. "I've dealt with a lot of weird things, but this is new." Mara nodded, her hands already working on a small device. She tapped a few buttons, and a holographic map projected from her scanner. Lines of light connected the drone to the pod, and tiny symbols danced across the display. "It's giving us coordinates," Mara said. "Somewhere else. Looks like it wants us to take it there." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Somewhere else? Sounds like the start of an adventure." Mara laughed softly. "Exactly, and we're not turning back now. Come on." The drone led them further into the canyon, but the terrain became more challenging. Jagged rocks forced them to climb carefully, and occasional sand pits threatened to swallow their feet. The duo moved in perfect coordination, Mara using her gadgets to stabilize the scanner or create small bridges of light, and Jace scouting ahead and keeping an eye out for loose rocks or unexpected obstacles. "You move like a desert fox," Mara said with a grin as Jace carefully jumped over a deep crevice. "Thanks," he replied with a small bow. "You move like someone who's used to building clever solutions. Looks like we make a good team." The drone led them to the edge of a small plateau. From here, the desert stretched endlessly in every direction, but below, in the valley, strange lights blinked like tiny stars scattered across the ground. The energy readings were stronger than ever. "That has to be it," Mara said, pointing toward the lights. "Whatever the drone is connected to, it's down there." Jace looked over the edge. "That's quite a drop." "You think it's safe?" "Safe enough if we go slowly," Mara replied. She pulled a small device from her bag, a compact grappling hook launcher that extended a cable strong enough to hold both of them. "We'll rappel down. This is part of the fun." Step by careful step, they descended into the valley. The drone floated ahead, blinking rapidly as if cheering them on. Once at the bottom, they realized the lights weren't random. They formed a grid pattern around another, larger metallic object. It resembled a control station, but older, with worn edges and markings that glowed faintly. Mara stepped forward, scanning the station. "It's definitely automated. There's energy stored here, but no one's controlling it." It might have been waiting for someone or something to arrive. Jace crouched beside the station, examining the symbols. "Looks alien, but not dangerous, at least not yet. Maybe it's some kind of delivery hub." The drone zipped around the station, then landed on a small panel. Lights on the panel flashed, and a soft hum filled the air. Mara's eyes widened. "It's trying to communicate," she said. "It wants us to activate it." "Maybe it's waiting for us to do something." Jace nodded. "Then let's do it." Carefully, Mara pressed a few buttons on her scanner, connecting her device to the station. The hum grew louder, but it was not unpleasant. The lights brightened, forming patterns that danced across the valley walls. The drone hovered above, spinning happily. Suddenly, a soft beam of light shot from the station into the sky, forming a glowing path across the desert.
Mara gasped. "It's a signal."
"It's pointing somewhere." Jace smiled, feeling the thrill of the unknown. "Looks like our mission just got bigger. Whoever, or whatever, sent this, we're following now." For the first time, the crater plains seemed less like a lonely desert and more like the start of an adventure that could stretch across the stars. The drone zipped ahead, leading the way, while Mara and Jace prepared to follow, hearts racing with curiosity and excitement. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Mara asked, her smile wide and confident. "Ready," Jace replied. "Let's see where this path takes us." As they started toward the glowing beam, neither of them knew what they would find at the other end: an abandoned station, a hidden treasure, or perhaps something even stranger. But for now, the thrill of discovery and the fun of the chase were enough. And in the valley of glowing lights, with the drone spinning above them, Jace and Mara knew that Dustspire's most unusual adventure had only just begun. The glowing beam of light stretched across the desert, pointing like a silver arrow toward the distant horizon. Jace Calloway and Mara Biggs followed the small drone as it zipped ahead, weaving between jagged rocks and glowing sand ridges. The valley behind them faded into darkness, while the path ahead seemed alive with mysterious energy. "Feels like we're chasing a star," Jace said, shading his eyes with one hand as he scanned the desert. "I've chased a lot of things, Mara, but this is something else." Mara laughed softly, adjusting her scanner. "Better be ready for surprises. This is exactly why I love working with strange tech. It's unpredictable, fun, and sometimes magical." The drone led them for hours across the uneven desert terrain. Small dust devils twisted through the air, and the faint hum of energy from the beam made the hairs on their arms tingle. Even the stars above seemed brighter, as though the desert itself was alive with electricity. Finally, the beam ended at the edge of a wide plateau. Before them stood the remains of an ancient alien station, half buried in sand and glowing with faint blue energy. The structure looked old and mysterious, covered in markings and symbols neither of them recognized. Small panels blinked on its walls, and tiny drones moved in patterns around the station like guards, but they didn't seem aggressive. Jace stepped forward, examining the building. Looks abandoned. But not broken. "That beam has been working for a while." Mara's eyes sparkled. "It's a control hub of some kind. Maybe a communication station or a navigation post. Let me scan it." She activated her portable scanner, which hummed and projected a holographic map over the desert. Lines of energy traced through the station and connected to the distant beam. "It's like a network," she said. "The station was sending information, maybe to someone or something far away." Jace looked over her shoulder. "And the drone? It's guiding us to turn it back on?" "Exactly," Mara replied. "It seems like it wants us to finish what whoever started here couldn't." They approached the main entrance, a wide doorway framed with glowing blue symbols. Mara touched a panel beside it, and the symbols lit up brighter, forming a pattern like a puzzle. She muttered. "Looks like we need to activate this in a specific sequence." "That's why the drone is helping. It knows the code." Jace crouched beside her, studying the symbols. "So it's a puzzle." "Perfect. I like puzzles." Together they began pressing panels and buttons according to the drone's signals. Each correct input made a soft chime, while a wrong one caused a harmless puff of colored light to pop from the panel. Mara giggled. "Okay, last one," she said, carefully pressing a symbol shaped like a star. The panels glowed brightly, and the doorway slowly opened with a quiet hum. Inside, the station was even more impressive than they expected. Rows of consoles lined the walls, blinking with lights and symbols. Holographic screens hovered above the surfaces, showing maps, readings, and streams of data. A soft breeze from the desert drifted in, carrying the faint scent of metal and sand. "Wow," Jace whispered. "It's like stepping into another world." Mara moved to one of the consoles. "Let's see what this station knows." She tapped the controls, and the holographic screens responded instantly, showing grids of stars, desert planets, and unknown coordinates. Lines connected planets to each other, and tiny drones blinked across the maps like messages moving through space. "It's a delivery network," Mara said, her voice full of excitement. "Not supplies, data. Someone, or something, was delivering messages or information across planets. And this station is one of the hubs." Jace nodded. "The drone wanted us to reactivate it." "Makes sense. But why Dustspire? Why now?" Before Mara could answer, the station's systems began to hum louder. Panels blinked rapidly, and the drone spun in the air with excitement. Then a soft, friendly voice echoed through the room. "Welcome, visitors. Thank you for arriving. Please follow instructions to complete activation." Jace and Mara exchanged surprised looks. "It talks?" Jace asked. Mara laughed. "Of course it talks. It's an intelligence station. Probably waiting for someone trustworthy to turn it back on," the voice continued. "To complete activation, you must follow the energy path to the next hub. Your guidance is required to restore the network." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Next hub? This isn't over?" "Not even close," Mara said, grinning. "But that's okay. Adventure doesn't wait for anyone." They followed the energy path displayed on the holographic screen. The drone hovered above, leading the way outside the station. The desert beyond glowed faintly with traces of energy, guiding their steps. As they walked, Mara's scanner beeped softly. The station is sharing coordinates, sending a signal to the next hub. Whoever designed this didn't want it lost, and they certainly didn't want it falling into the wrong hands. Jace chuckled. Good thing it found us, then. Hours passed, and the desert grew colder. The moon rose higher, casting silver shadows over the dunes. The duo crossed rocky ridges, glowing sands, and small sand pits, always following the drone's guidance. Occasionally, they would pause to check Mara's scanner, which displayed energy flows like glowing threads weaving across the landscape. Looks like the hub is close, Mara said as they approached a narrow canyon. The walls shimmered with light, pulsing softly as though the desert itself was alive. Jace stepped carefully. Be careful. These energy paths are probably delicate. One wrong step. Relax, Mara said with a wink. We're fine. Just follow me and the drone. At the end of the canyon, they found a small platform, half buried in sand, with another metallic station similar to the first. The station's panels blinked faintly, waiting for activation. Mara approached and began scanning. The energy flow here is stronger than the first station. Looks like it hasn't been touched for decades. Jace knelt beside her. Then we better be careful. This one might be trickier. Mara smiled and nodded. Together they worked on the panels, guided by the drone. Each correct sequence of symbols caused the lights to glow brighter. The station hummed with increasing energy, and the desert around them shimmered like a mirage. Finally, with one last press of a glowing star symbol, the station activated. Lights spread across the panels, and holographic paths connected to distant planets, glowing brightly in the night. The drone spun happily above them, almost as if it were celebrating. It's working, Mara exclaimed. The network is coming back online. Jace laughed. I'll say, you did all the hard work, while I mostly looked impressive. Mara rolled her eyes playfully. You kept the path clear, hero. Don't forget that. Suddenly, the friendly voice echoed again. Activation complete. Thank you, visitors. Your assistance is recorded. The network will now continue its function. Dustspire will remember your actions. Jace grinned. Not bad for a day's work. Mara nodded, looking at the station. We did something important. Not just for us, but for the universe. Or at least this desert planet. The drone hovered above them one last time before spinning toward the sky, following the path of the newly activated network. It blinked once at them, as if saying goodbye. Guess it's time to head back, Jace said, brushing dust from his coat. Yeah, Mara replied, but I have a feeling this isn't the last adventure we'll have. That station, it's just the beginning. They began the journey back toward Dustspire, the desert quiet and calm around them. The moonlight lit their path, and the glow of the distant stations faded slowly behind them. For the first time that day, the desert felt peaceful, yet full of possibilities. Jace looked at Mara and smiled. You know, choosing you wasn't a bad idea. Mara laughed. Glad to hear it. And you? You didn't make a bad choice either. The crater plain stretched behind them, silent and mysterious. But for Jace and Mara, the desert no longer felt empty. It was alive with adventure, energy, and the promise of more mysteries to explore. As the lights of Dustspire appeared on the horizon, they knew the town would hear tales of their journey, and perhaps, one day, someone would follow the same glowing path they had taken. And for Jace and Mara, the adventure was far from over. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting warm gold and pink light across the crater plains. The desert that had been alive with mysterious energy only a night before now seemed calm and quiet. Jace Calloway and Mara Biggs walked side by side, their footsteps kicking up small clouds of sand as they made their way back to Dustspire. The glow from the recently activated stations had faded, leaving only faint traces of light in the rocks and dunes behind them. Jace adjusted his hat and looked over at Mara. Well, that was different. I've chased bounties, solved mysteries, and seen strange things, but this was something else. Mara laughed, shaking her head. I told you. Adventure finds you whether you're ready or not. And look at us. We actually made it work. As they approached the outskirts of the town, Dustspire began to stir. Shopkeepers opened doors, children ran out to play, and townsfolk looked toward the horizon, curious. Word had already spread. Something unusual had happened in the desert, and everyone was wondering who had gone out there. "Looks like we're going to get an audience," Jace said with a grin.
Mara adjusted her tool bag. I don't mind.
The town should know what happened. When they reached the center of Dustspire, Sheriff Bramble was waiting, leaning against the doorway of his office with a grin that stretched across his face. "Well, well, look who's back," he called, waving them over. "So, which one of you is ready to tell me what happened out there?" Jace gave a small bow. "We followed the drone, activated a station, and reconnected a network that stretches across planets. That's the short version." The sheriff's eyes widened. "You what?" Mara stepped forward, smiling. "It's true. The station was abandoned, but it still worked. The drone guided us, and together we reactivated the energy network. It's alive again, and Dustspire is officially part of it." The sheriff clapped his hands together. That's incredible. You two just made Dustspire famous without even trying. This town will be talking about you for years." Crowds of townsfolk gathered as Mara and Jace explained the adventure. Children listened wide-eyed as Mara described the glowing energy paths, and adults nodded in admiration at the clever use of gadgets and teamwork. Even those who had doubted Mara's abilities before looked at her with newfound respect. "You really are something, Mara," Jace said quietly as the crowd chattered around them. "And you're not so bad yourself," Mara replied with a grin. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Now, I have a little tradition for returning heroes. Every time someone does something remarkable, the town gathers and gives them a proper welcome. You two deserve it." A few moments later, the townsfolk began organizing a small celebration in the town square. Lanterns were hung from wooden posts, and a table was set with food, some traditional Dustspire dishes and a few treats from nearby star merchants. Children ran around carrying tiny, glowing toys Mara had quickly repaired with spare parts from her tool bag. The air was filled with laughter and excitement. Jace looked around, impressed. "You really know how to make a party, Mara." Mara laughed. "It's not just me. This town knows how to celebrate. And today, we earned it." As they walked through the square, the sheriff raised his voice again. "Everyone, listen up. These two have done something remarkable." They faced the desert, followed a mysterious drone, and reactivated a network no one else could. "Let's hear it for Jace Calloway and Mara Biggs." The crowd erupted into cheers, clapping and shouting their names. Mara blushed but waved politely, while Jace tipped his hat with a small bow. After the initial excitement settled, the sheriff leaned closer to them. "I have to ask, what comes next? Are you going to keep following these drones, or will Dustspire be your base for more adventures?" Mara thought for a moment. "I think this is just the beginning. The stations are part of a bigger network, and someone, or something, designed it to be found by the right people. We could explore other hubs, learn more, and maybe even help planets connected by it." Jace nodded. "Sounds like a plan, and I have to admit, I like having a clever partner to share the adventure with." The sheriff laughed. "You two are a pair, clever and brave, and a little unpredictable. Dustspire's lucky to have you both." As the sun climbed higher, the town quieted down a little. Mara and Jace found a quiet spot near the edge of the square, away from the chatter. "You know," Jace said, looking at Mara, "I wasn't sure at first, picking you. But it turns out it was the best choice I've ever made." Mara smiled warmly. "I knew you'd figure it out eventually. Besides, it's not about appearances, right? It's about what you can do and how you face challenges together." They shared a quiet laugh, feeling the satisfaction of a job well done. The drone's adventure had led them to more than just glowing stations. It had shown them the value of teamwork, clever thinking, and trust. Suddenly, a small child ran up, holding a tiny broken mechanical toy. "Can you fix this, Mara?" he asked shyly. Mara knelt down immediately, her fingers moving expertly over the toy. "Of course. Let's see what's wrong with it." Jace watched her for a moment, shaking his head with admiration. "You really are something." "I like to help," Mara said simply, fixing the toy so it floated in front of the child's hands like a tiny hovering star. The child's eyes widened in delight, and he ran off to show his friends. Jace smiled. "Adventure or not, it's the little things that matter most, isn't it?" "Exactly," Mara replied, standing up. "And Dustspire is full of little things worth caring about." As the day wore on, the town returned to its usual rhythm, but the story of the drone and the stations lingered in every conversation. Dustspire had seen many strange events before, but none quite like this. Jace and Mara became local heroes, not for fighting, but for cleverness, bravery, and teamwork. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and violet, Jason and Mara walked to the outskirts of town. The desert stretched ahead, calm and mysterious, with faint hints of glowing energy still visible in the distance. "Do you think there are more stations?" Jace asked, looking toward the horizon. Mara nodded. "Definitely. This network is bigger than we realized, and I have a feeling some of them are waiting for us to find them." Jace grinned. "Then I guess we have more adventures ahead." "Dustspire can wait. The desert and the stars are calling." Mara laughed. "I like the sound of that. But for now, let's enjoy this moment. We did something important, and the town will remember it." They stood together looking out over the crater plains. The wind carried the soft hum of the reactivated stations, and the small drone floated above in a playful spin, its lights blinking like stars. It had guided them, tested them, and now, it seemed, it was saying goodbye, at least for now. "Ready to head back to the town square?" Mara asked. Jace nodded. "Yeah. Let's see how a hero's welcome ends. Maybe there's a pie in it for me." Mara laughed and shook her head. "You always think about the pie." As they walked back, the townsfolk waved and cheered again. Dustspire was alive with gratitude, curiosity, and excitement, and Jace and Mara, partners in adventure, cleverness, and friendship, knew that this was only the start of their journeys. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the town, while stars began to twinkle above. Somewhere out in the desert, other stations waited, other mysteries called, and other adventures beckoned. But for now, Dustspire celebrated. Jace and Mara stepped into the town square, greeted by applause and laughter. Children ran up to them, adults shook their hands, and Sheriff Bramble gave a proud nod. "You two have done Dustspire proud," he said. "May your adventures continue, and may you always find clever ways to solve the mysteries that come your way." Jace tipped his hat. "Thank you, Sheriff. We'll do our best." Mara smiled at the crowd, her eyes sparkling. "And we'll be back for more. The desert and the stars aren't finished with us yet." As the evening settled into night, Dustspire glowed softly under the moonlight. The adventures of Jace Calloway and Mara Biggs had just begun, and the story of the drone, the stations, and the clever teamwork would be remembered in the town for generations. And so, the cowboy and the inventor walked side by side, ready for whatever mysteries the universe had in store. Dustspire had been changed forever, not by force or conflict, but by courage, clever thinking, and the joy of adventure. The stars twinkled above, and somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of reactivated stations promised that this was only the beginning.